Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton, and in today's Pleiadian point of view, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us about the difference between density and dimension. And I don't know about you, but when I first started out on my spiritual journey, this was a huge point of confusion for me. I noticed that everyone seemed to define these terms slightly differently. Some people like to use the term density, others use the term dimension. I couldn't tell how they compared and contrasted with each other. So I fell down kind of a rabbit hole trying to research this topic. And one thing I noticed is that there are infinite definitions out there, and most of them seem to conflict. And a few of them, you seem to need a physics degree to even understand what it is talking about. So I asked the Pleiadians to give us a simple way to understand these concepts so that we know what people are talking about in the spiritual community, so that we know if we are comparing apples to apples. Now, one thing that makes this conversation even more tricky is that even our star family members don't seem to agree on the definitions and on which scale to use. So you will find some members of our galactic family use the term density, others prefer dimension. So the Pleiadians are going to tell us today a little bit about what the difference is so that you can just understand what people mean when they are using these terms. Now, when we talk about density, and I'm seeing density being used more and more lately, what we're talking about is a range of frequency. So the Pleiadians like to describe density as a frequency range. So the higher you go on this density scale, so if you are fourth density, fifth density, sixth density, as you go up, your frequency increases and your range of perception increases. So the way you can think about this is think of us who are formerly third density beings. We would have a range of perception of maybe this wide. And then as we move up the dimensional scale, the density scale, our perception expands as our frequency expands, our consciousness expands. So the higher you go on the density scale, the higher your frequency and the more you can perceive. So that is one reason that we as light workers and starseeds are starting to tap into new gifts and abilities as the collective moves through the ascension process. Because now that we have moved out of third density into early fourth density, we can perceive more than we could when we were at a lower density level. So a simple way to look at density when you hear people talking about races of beings being at a particular density is to just think of it as a scale. The higher you go up, the higher your frequency, the higher your consciousness, and the more you can perceive. So that's a nice, simple way to look at the concept of density. Now, you'll notice that some people prefer the term dimension. And it's kind of funny because even within a particular star race, like the Pleiadians, some groups of them prefer the word dimension and others prefer density. So this is something that there's very little consistency even in our galactic family. So what I take away from the whole conversation is just to find an easy way for you to make sense of it. So just having a simple working definition is really all we need. So let's talk now about the difference between dimension from density, which we just discussed. So when we are talking about dimension, according to the guides, what we are talking about is something more similar to location or a place in space-time. So according to the guides, there are actually infinite dimensions within a particular density. So you can think of dimensions as being more locational in nature and density as being a scale of frequency. So why do we need to know this? Why is this something that we talk about so much in the spiritual community? Well, really, the only reason this is relevant is it helps us orient ourselves as compared to another being. So if we know that a being that is being channeled comes from the sixth density, we know that they have much broader perception than we do, a much higher frequency than we do. So it just helps us orient ourselves to another point of consciousness. That's really all we need to know about density and dimension. It helps us kind of place ourselves in relation to another point of consciousness, another being. And because this is a topic that even our galactic family members don't seem to completely agree on, it's kind of funny if you listen to certain channeled beings answer this question. I love the conversation about fifth density because you hear some of our star races saying, in fifth density, you have completely left physical form. You are in pure non-physical. And then you have other star races who are in fifth density going, what are you talking about? We're in fifth density and we have form. So you'll see that there is a lot of disagreement around this topic, or a lot of times what it boils down to is we're not using the same definitions. So one thing that is helpful whenever you are thinking about density and dimension is that it's good to be flexible, because everyone seems to use different definitions, which of course means you're going to get different answers. So a very simple way to look at this whole conversation, according to the Pleiadians, is to think of it as a scale of frequency, a range of frequency. And the higher you go on that scale, the more you can perceive. So that is a simple way to look at it, but find a definition that works for you. Just something that helps you make sense out of when people use these terms, because there is no right way or wrong way. It's all about what makes sense to you. So that is the Pleiadian point of view for today. I hope this helps you. I'll see you soon.